Welcome to Unpacking Peanuts, the podcast where three cartoonists take an in-depth look at the greatest comic strip of all time, Peanuts by Charles Schulz.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. This is Unpacking Peanuts, and it's 1967, and in Hennepin County, Minnefornia, nothing is real, and there's nothing to get hung about. There is, however, a Cheshire Beagle, a masked marvel, and a bird hippie, and I can't wait to talk about all of it. And who am I? Well, I'm Jimmy Gownley. I'm your host for this evening. I'm also the cartoonist behind Amelia Rules, 7 Good Reasons Not to Grow Up, and The Dumbest Idea Ever. Joining me, as always, are my pals, co-hosts, and fellow cartoonists. He's a playwright. He's a composer, both for the band Complicated People, as well as for this very podcast. He's the co-creator of the original comic book price guide, the original editor for Amelia Rules, as well as the cartoonist of Strange Attractors, Tangled River, and A Gathering of Spells. It's Michael Cohen.
Hey there.
And he's the executive producer and writer of Mystery Science Theater 3000, a former vice president of Archie Comics, and the creator of Sweetest Beasts on Instagram. It's Harold Buckholtz.
Hi.
What?
Well, I mean,
I meant, don't you have a script?
I meant hello. Hello again.
Because
hello.
I didn't say the Instagram strips. Well, let's do that again.
You didn't say such great strips.
So this is
you just listed my strips.
Is this my catchphrase now? Hello. That's all I got.
Yes, that's all you got. Hey, you had almost a year to come up with it. You got hello.
I'm innovating in the honor of Charles Schulz year 1967. I'm saying hi. It's less formal.
No, everyone was getting high in 1967.
So, guys, it's great to be back here talking Peanuts with you. 1967 was a pretty wild year. It seemed like Schulz was going off in a lot of different directions. To me, it felt very loose. It felt very fun and joyful, and a period of time where he's just kind of following his bliss. It's quite a long way from 1950, and I think perhaps because last week we spent our recording time looking at strips from the entire run of the strips thus far for our Valentine's Day episode, it really struck me reading this how much has changed since those very early days. What do you guys think, Michael?
I liked it a lot. I actually wasn't expecting to like it this much. I was wondering if all the pop media success was maybe going to his head somehow, and he'd start like relying more on things like the Red Baron strips and Peppermint Patty stuff. So and start dropping some of the old faithful concepts. But no, he I mean, it was a nice mix of newer characters and the old ones. And he even brought back some of my favorite shticks that he hasn't used in years. So
I saw that vulture and I thought of you immediately.
Lots of vultures. I was very happy about that. Anyway, yeah, great year. And a couple of really odd innovations on his part that definitely veer from his style.
Yeah. Yes. Artistically, there are a few moments where he goes into, pure cartoon expressionism, which I really enjoyed seeing, just every once in a while for when he plays at those outer reaches of his style. It's really,
I'd say it was cartoon Fauvism.
Oh yeah. Well, at least on those Sundays, I guess it is. Yes. Harold, what are you thinking?
You said looser. That was I put down 2 words for this year. It was looser and freer.
Yeah,
that's what I felt with this strip. And you think about, Charles Schulz is how many miles away from San Francisco? This is 1967, Haight-Ashbury. I can't help but think about that when I'm looking at these strips. I mean, Schulz is a guy from Minnesota who's become a Californian, and I get this vibe that he's in the cultural zeitgeist, and it's crazy that Charles Schulz is like at the epicenter of so much in 1967, given what's going on.
Yeah, because
but he's not an old curmudgeon,
right?
No,
like some cartoonists we could name, and his little bit of mocking of the counterculture is done in good humor, and it's not nasty at all.
And it actually weird, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, in our bird hippie strip when we get to it, but it almost comes from a place of understanding. It's like, yeah, no one gets me either. I get it. And that has always been his genius, is that alienation, that pain you're feeling, or that joy you're feeling, whatever, that's so personal to you. Yeah, I get it too. It's different, but I get it. And that's amazing, because like, I don't, like I said for the last couple episodes, he should be well into crank territory at this point.
But he's experiencing success like he's never experienced before, like almost no one has ever experienced before. He's got kids this year ranging 9 to 17 during 1967. That's what a year to be raising kids, right? I mean, he's got to be living this and feeling it and experiencing it. That's what's so interesting to me, is that he's not locked up somewhere off in a corner. I just feel like he's a part of something. I mean, Determined Productions, which has been putting out the Happiness Is books and that sort of thing, the little hugely popular gift books, they continue to put out new editions. I think there's one that came out this year. Now that Determined is in San Francisco, and when I look at the design of those books, I think of the counterculture. I think because they're using those old classic fonts, it just seems like it's something that was like on the forefront of where a lot of the culture was going, and they swept Schulz into it with those gift books, because they have a really 60s feel to them.
They do, and really like a psychedelic 60s feel, because like you say, they are combining that old, almost like poster style, like circus poster style typography, and really, really bright colors.
I mean, that's Sgt. Pepper, right?
It's
I mean, that's
totally, exactly.
And yet that first one came out in the early 60s.
5 years before, yes.
And yet that's San Francisco. Schulz is plugging into San Francisco that early. I don't know if Schulz ever visited I bet he did, their offices or whatever,
right,
other than just coming to see him. But, did Schulz witness this world firsthand? I don't know. It would be interesting to know if he did. Now, Lee Mendelsohn Productions was kind of on the way to San Francisco, not far out of San Jose, just south of there. So a lot of Schulz's world is kind of moving in that direction. And I find that fascinating as I'm reading these strips. And talking about that looser and freer style, it seems like he is part of that. He's not like you were saying, he's not in reaction to it like an artist in New York who's in his 50s and not too happy with what he's seeing going on in the culture. Schulz just has this, he just seems to be benefiting from what's going on in the society.
It's such a strange thing to think of, though, because when you look at the 17 years from 1950 to 1967, just culturally, what a massive change. And we have gone through massive change recently, not just things like the pandemic, but I mean just the onset of social media and the ubiquity of smartphones and all that stuff. But at the same time, if I looked at like a 30 Rock episode or whatever from 2007, it wouldn't feel, I don't think, quite as removed as a 1950 Peanut strip from a 1967 Peanut strip.
Yeah.
And if he didn't find a way to constantly evolve, boy, it would have been dead in the water by now.
Yeah, it really is just constantly impressive to see where he's going in finding these new places, and the sense that he does feel. I feel he's got a confidence. It's just been building and building and building and building and building, and it continues into this year, where he sees what he's doing is working. It's resonating. And I think that frees him up, which then frees up the characters. And that's really fascinating. Yeah, this year is a really interesting one to look at. And there's some new things coming on. The Snoopy side eye.
Yeah.
Where he addresses the reader directly, usually with the big grin, but not always, is really going strong this year. And again, that it just feels confident and direct. And, that to me is one of the things that really sets Peanuts apart, is that breaking the fourth wall that he does here. I don't know what you guys think of that, but I mean, that to me is just a jolt of energy every time Snoopy just looks at you and tells you something.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, for me too. I absolutely love that stuff. So, with all that type of change going on, both in the world and in the strip, I imagine we're going to have some fluctuation on the old tier list by the end of the year. But, Michael, can you remind us, where are we at the beginning? At the end of 1966, where was our tier list?
Okay, well, I'll remind myself too. Okay, as you know, we have 5 categories. It's a hierarchy of characters. Category A, top billing. It's been consistent since the beginning, except Lucy wasn't there. Charlie Brown, Snoopy, Linus, and Lucy. And Linus wasn't there. Category B, which is co-starring. And I'm considering this to be people who actually drive the story and don't just react. So we've got Schroeder, we've got Frida, Sally, and Peppermint Patty, who just showed up. Category C, which is also featuring, and these are characters I think who are there to maybe comment or just be in a line when he needs a lot of kids and don't really drive the main story at all. So we've got Patty, Violet, Five, and the new kid, Roy, who doesn't actually live in the neighborhood. Category D, which is with, are characters who have faded to the point where he'll use them a couple times, and if he needs somebody to play second base, he'll put them in. We got Shermy, Pigpen, and this character I'm going to call Bird X. There's a Bird X from last year. And then category E, which is the graveyard, and some other characters are heading in that direction. No. Characters who are no longer in the strip. And we're featuring Charlotte Braun here. But since we did consider Farron the cat as a character, I think Farron belongs in this category because he's never showed up again either.
R.I.P. Farron. He may come back at some point, but never with any any gusto.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the tier list, and at the end of the year, we'll update it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where we end up. Now before we get into all of this, we're talking about this is I didn't talk to you guys about this, that I'm going to bring this up, and it's only tangentially related, but I think it's important. We're just talking about all the changes in the world. And we're going through a massive one now with all this, with AI art. I mean, that is all that my feed is about. All my artist friends and people I follow on social media are in a tizzy about it. And I actually was listening to an interview with Billy Corgan, who's a songwriter from Smashing Pumpkins. And his take was that basically once AI starts making art, it's going to be impossible for an intuitive, natural human artist to compete with them. And that's a pretty nihilistic take. And wow. I'm looking at these strips, and I'm just seeing nothing but warmth and humanity and personality. And I don't have so much a direct question, but what do you guys think about the situation that we're in now? And how would an artist like a Schulz approach their career or their craft in a world where art's instant?
Well, I've just decided this is going to go away in like 6 months and we'll never hear of it again.
I have a feeling there's a little of that possibly too.
Yeah, maybe I'm in denial, but I have no interest in it. I can't imagine it appealing to anyone, and it's certainly no threat to my career since I don't have one. So anyway, I'm kind of blasé about the whole thing. Yeah, it's just those crazy kids. It'll pass.
What do you think, Harold?
It depends on what people are looking for in art, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the way I put it, like a book is basically just an invitation into someone's mind.
Yes.
I mean, that's what I think of. And if there is no soul or mind attached to it, unless it's hanging in my hotel room, behind the bed, because some of that art, I'm always fascinated by the art in hotel rooms because it has to be inoffensive,
Right.
and it has to be somewhat aesthetically, generically appealing. And I'm always like, what's that going to look like in this room in this city? And you get this little hint of some buyer trying to find the most inoffensive thing. And,
Can I interject with a little story?
I
Sure.
think I know what it's going to be. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, this amused me no end. I was at some convention with Steve Bissett and Rick Veitch, and I can't remember which one told me this. I think it was Veitch. But he said they used to travel together to shows and stay at hotel rooms together. And to amuse themselves, they draw little monsters in all the beautiful landscapes on the wall.
Two very famous Swamp Thing artists, for those of you who aren't in the know. Yeah, and Veitch said something like he would love I think Bissett said he would love the thought that some drunk salesman at 2 a.m. would be staring at this painting and see this little gremlin staring back at him and just get completely freaked out.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
Anyway, go ahead, Harold. Sorry.
No, I mean that is the thing I think that a lot of people try to get out of art. For inoffensive art that is there as background noise, yes, I think, because that's what AI does really well. Is it's like, I want to have this kind of generic mood, but it's not the focus of what what you're experiencing. For background stuff, I could see the AI art could become very common. But when it comes to sharing the essence of a human being and an individual, there's no way.
Right.
It just can't. It can't do it. I mean, even if they were to say, "Well, combine all of the general thoughts of George Bernard Shaw and whatever, or some group of people that you like, and say, give me a new novel," even then, it can only take from what has already been created and mix it up. And I suppose if that were a Hallmark movie, sure, because that's all we're looking for is an iteration of something that makes you feel good, but you're not really interested in the committee that made the movie. But when it comes to somebody sharing who they are and what they've learned of the world in their years, there's no way. I mean, it's an impossibility as far as I can tell.
But artists, certain artists over the years have used randomness in their work.
Right.
I mean, it's with intention, but they are putting the decisions in the hands of, a roll of the dice, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Or you think like Jackson Pollock to some extent, he doesn't know where that strip's going.
But I'm thinking of Philip K. Dick in The High Castle, where the plot was driven by
Burroughs.
Yeah. Yeah, and Burroughs. Yeah. And I think in music, too. Yeah, the Beatles used like tapes lying on the floor, random noises, and they just put them straight into the composition of some songs.
Yeah, and then that's a statement. That's its own statement from individuals. So yeah, it's still, yeah.
But we have nothing to fear.
Who I feel bad. Well, I don't know if I feel bad exactly, but it's an awkward place. I think younger people, say the generation after me, have spent so much time trying to make their art look like it was created by a computer, in part because that's just where I guess commercial art was, especially comic art. I mean, honestly, I know that we're supposed to be team comics these days and rah everything, but comics are hideous, offensive, awful, aesthetically.
But what do you really think, Jimmy?
They're not great.
I thought we weren't going to insult anyone anymore.
But the point being, it was supposed to look that way. You didn't want any humanity in it. You wanted every aspect of it to be perfect, and it looks like a machine did it. And now that a machine is doing it, I feel they're lost.
Well, it's interesting if you look at. I mean, I think the biggest thing that happened there's a lot of big things that happened to art. I mean, one of them was mass reproduction, right? That was a huge thing, and that changed the way people created because who the audience was changed, because all of a sudden there was a much broader group of people, including people who have fewer means, who all of a sudden could experience art. Mm-hmm. The other huge thing that I can think of that required artists to respond was photography, right?
Right.
Because you could perfectly capture a Hudson River autumn, and then there's this school of art that was trying to go for that reality. And it's interesting that people went away from that and fought against the idea of, okay, well, that now is no longer the purview of the master artist. Now there's a thing that can capture this. And in a way, that's soulless. Somebody had to point the camera, and there's obviously artistry in taking a photo. Mm-hmm. But if the image itself is the thing that's drawing people in and making them respond, an artist can't compete with the reality of that without adding something else of themselves into it beyond trying to capture what they see.
Therefore, photography is a hoax.
And so, I think the same thing. And it's interesting that over time, there were a number of artists who said, well, I can out reality now with these computers. Mm-hmm. It's like the magic realism of imagery or whatever, that now I can take this thing and make it even more perfect and move these perfect things together. There's going to have to be a response to AI from the next generation of people who are encountering it. And I think a lot of that may go back similar to what happened with photography, where they take it back to something that's raw mm-hmm. and just more about what they feel, because they know that AI can't match that.
Have you seen, there's a film about this artist who did that pen and ink portrait of Marilyn Monroe, which took him 6 years. Do you know this?
Mm-mm.
It's life-size, pen and ink. He spent like 2 months on her like left eye. You can focus in as close as you can, and you can it never actually resolves into pen lines. It's so perfect.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a statement about realism. He says, you want realism? This is realism. But it took him 6 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I want to ask you guys, this has not been a big part of my life, but it certainly has for many, many, many people, and that's video games. Now, to me, a video game is like a movie that you get to enter into, but somebody else programmed it, right? Mm-hmm. So you're living out a story in these more, I'm thinking these more realistic video games, where that's created by a committee of people to help you make some choices that they allow you to make, mm-hmm. right? And I don't know, as that becomes more and more versatile, I mean, that AI thing kind of plays into this, but I feel like a lot of people are already preconditioned to deal with the idea that I'm living in an art world that has been generated for me, but I'm still finding a way to put myself into it. The video game is absolutely a visceral way of doing that. So maybe this is not going to be such a shocker to those who are now, okay, now I can make a painting by requesting this, but I'm going to find a way to put my own little odd spin on it because I'm messing with the AI, or they're taking the AI image and then they're owning that and then reworking it. Yeah. So I'm sure there's going to be some really fascinating responses to AI. It's just going to get absorbed into the personalities of these new artists.
Well, possibly. I mean, a lot of people are so convinced they are not creative and they could never be creative that the thought of actually being part of a creation is a big deal to them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that might actually inspire them.
Like, I made this, and we'll go, no, you just told the computer what kind of images to look for.
Right, but that could be a feedback loop, where that inspires them to find something unique in themselves.
Well, here's a thought experiment to get us back to Peanuts. Okay, imagine some crazy person decided to scan every square Peanuts panel. Mm-hmm. Who knows how many of those there are, and created a program to randomize so it would pick 4. Mm-hmm. No, without the words. Just the 4 images. Do you think those could be setups for new strips?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, not 100% across the board, but I do think they could be. When I was offered a development deal for an Amelia comic strip from the Washington Post Syndicate years ago, and I wasn't able to do it because of Simon & Schuster's contract. I mean, that sounds like I'm blaming them, but just because the legality of it wouldn't work out, I couldn't do it. But while the contract stuff was being worked out, I started thinking, well, can I even do this? And one thing I did was I took a notebook and made like a random sequence generator where it was just like, these are all the possible topics I could cover. These are all the possible panel combinations. These are all the places I could put the punchline, and then I just would randomly select them, and it would give all the parameters for a strip. It's a 4-page strip with the punchline in the third panel, and it features Reggie and Pajama Man talking about school. And it was shocking that once you had all of that, you could really come up with a joke very quickly.
Yeah, and I can see that with Peanuts because, so many people know so many aspects of Peanuts that, just the idea of putting it into a generator and some of the non sequitur that would come out of it would be absolutely hilarious because we're just seeing all these mix-ups of things that we know came from Charles Schulz.
I think you'd have to specify the main character. Some character has to appear in at least 3 of the 4 panels.
Right. But then to have a random thing where Snoopy just shows up and after something between Lucy and Linus it's a long way to Tipperary,
Well,
anyway, let's get on to the strips because we've been babbling long enough.
All right. Well, we're going to get on with the strips then, because as Michael says, we've been babbling long enough. But before we do that, we're going to take a break. But before we take the break, here's what I want you to do. You can go on gocomics.com. You can get that fired up, type in 1967 Peanuts, and you can follow along with us. Now, if you're a really good student and you want to prepare ahead of time, you can subscribe to our newsletter, which comes out once a month, and it'll tell you in advance what strips we're covering, what special guests are coming out. We don't spam your inbox. It's just that email once a month, but it'll give you a heads up about what strips to read. So, yeah, we're going to take a break now, and then we'll come back, and we'll start with the great strips of 1967. Be right back.
Hi, everyone. I just want to take a moment to remind you that all 3 hosts are cartoonists themselves, and their work is available for sale. You can find links to purchase books by Jimmy, Harold, and Michael on our website. You can also support the show on Patreon or buy us a mud pie. Check out the store link on unpackingpeanuts.com.
And we're back. Did you miss us? It's 1967. Let's get right to the strips. January 4th. Linus and Lucy are sitting in some chairs in what looks like a living room or a hallway, but it's actually a waiting room. Linus says, "A measles shot? Good grief." He continues, "Why get vaccinated? Why not just wear something red or drink some elderberry blossom tea?" Lucy, unimpressed, says, "Those are old wives' cures." Linus says, "Some of those old wives were pretty sharp."
I'm going to interject here. I just proposed a new feature, a new segment called the Best Sequence Award. And we're going to, this year anyway, I've kind of cataloged the longer sequences over a week or more of dailies. And I think I have 9 this year. And at the end of the year, we're going to each vote on our favorite. So this one is the Linus measles sequence, which runs for a couple of weeks. And it's very, very current, dealing with the vaccinations and such.
Art-wise, great 1960s plastic waiting room chair. Love. I mean, I never ever get sick of seeing his little mid-century bric-a-brac and how nicely he draws it. What'd you think overall of this sequence, Michael? Will this be one of your contenders for strip of the year or for sequence of the year?
I already made up my mind.
Oh, you did? All right. I don't want to spoil it then.
No, this is very good. But it definitely gets into things that people are talking about now, because basically everybody just accepted the fact that, a couple of times a year, you're a little kid, they're going to, stick this huge needle in your arm.
Oh, you still do if you're going to.
You can't fight it.
Can't fight.
Yeah, and this feels a little bit like a PSA by Schulz, because like he knows he can only go a certain direction with this strip without getting himself in a huge amount of trouble. So he can't just do it for laughs. He's going somewhere with it. Linus couldn't come out victorious on this, where he's like, I'm holding out.
Right. It's funny though, because he does have this with Snoopy and the rabies shot. And I do sort of feel like when it is one removed, it adds a little bit of extra poetry or spark to it. You know what I mean? Where it's rather than it's Linus in a measles shot, it's a dog and a rabies shot, kind of like the Great Pumpkin, versus Santa Claus or whatever. But I do think we have to go back to the fact that he does have these kids this age, and this is clearly stuff that they're dealing with, like Michael said, constantly.
Yeah.
January 18th. The World War I flying ace is atop his Sopwith camel. He thinks to himself, here's the World War I flying ace escaping in a no, I lied. It's a stolen Fokker D. Suddenly, something catches his attention. Snoopy says, what's that? Newports. I'm being attacked by my own buddies. He's now screaming, hey, it's me. Don't shoot. Don't shoot. In the last panel, we see they have indeed shot. His doghouse is littered with bullet holes, and he says, give my regards to Unter den Linden.
So,
I don't think that needs comment. I think that is totally clear.
Harold, why did you pick this
it's
one?
a Peanuts obscurity.
Peanuts obscurities explained.
I guess. I mean, I apologize to my to our listeners in Germany. Maybe it's not so obscure to them, but I didn't know what Unter den Linden was, so I'm not sure how many people do. So I decided to bring it out.
It's under the something?
Under the linden trees.
Right. Yep. Named after Hal Linden, who was on Barney. No.
Underrated 70s show, by the way.
When one of the most depressing comedies ever.
It is drab, to say the least.
Oh my gosh, that they define brown. 70s brown in that show. But yeah, Under the Linden Trees, it's a boulevard in the center of Berlin, and we've had jokes about give my regards to Broadway. So now that he's considered, I guess, part of the German group being fired on by his own people, he's mixing it up. So I didn't get that one. I had to look it up, so I didn't know if others would be in the same position I was.
Well,
I was in the same position.
I knew it.
I knew 2/3 of it.
No,
thanks, Frau Ruschnack.
And so I wanted to do a little callback here. I think last episode we had mentioned that there was something missing in the December 14th, 1966 comic strip, and we invited people to comment on social media.
Oh, yes, our cliffhanger.
We're recording this before we put this out, so we don't know who has responded. But
through the magic of editing, we can call you out. And the first people to spot it and let us know were Craig Higgins on Facebook, David Scher on Twitter, and Joshua Stauffer on Instagram. Congratulations, Craig, David, and Joshua.
To reveal the thing that's missing in the second panel of the December 14th episode, pause it right now if you haven't looked already and you want to do the puzzle here, but it's in the second panel of the 1966 December 14th strip. The thing that is missing is Charlie Brown's ear. So I don't know. I'm assuming that is actually on the art, that Schulz forgot to put it in, and the syndicate didn't catch it, or they didn't want to tick off Schulz because they thought artistically he didn't want Charlie Brown to have an ear. But it's the Van Gogh moment of Peanuts. It's not just in Snoopy's doghouse. Charlie Brown is missing an ear in that second panel. And to up the stakes, what is missing in this strip with on January 18th, 1967?
Ooh, let's see.
It struck me that this isn't anything missing, but he seems to be going the wrong way.
Well, I think that's why he got shot at by
doesn't
his...
Doesn't he always fly left to right?
Well, he got...
I think it's because he's escaping and heading home.
Right.
I really do think that's what it is.
I think so, yeah.
What is missing? I do not know.
Look at panel 4.
No idea.
Look at the lettering.
Give my regards to Unter den...
Oh, what? There's only one...
Oh, the quotation mark?
Yeah, he didn't commit. He couldn't decide whether he wanted to put that in quotes or not, so he's got it on one side and not the other. What? Is that like the 2-period ellipse? I don't know.
I think that's just a straight up mistake. There's no possible reason to half quote something. And I actually think it would have been better with the quotes because it would have registered as a title.
I think that would have helped. Yeah.
One of the things that's interesting to me is that Snoopy has all these fantasies where he's able to do these amazing things, but he's also a failure at them. He doesn't get the Red Baron. Like anything could happen in his imagination, but he's always riddled with bullets. And maybe it comes from being Charlie Brown's dog. That's his model of humanity. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of the whole Peanut strip. We said that before, right? That it's something that's unrequited, something that, there's failure rather than success, and it seems to endear you to these characters. And this whole Snoopy is in World War I a lot this year, but nothing like last year. I think he was in 13 Sundays. Now he's in 7, and the dailies, I think there's 27. So almost 10% of the strips from 1967 are Snoopy in World War I in one form or another.
I have to say, I love the helmet. The World War I flying ace helmet, the whole look, I love, especially when the goggles are pulled up like they are in 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And awesome.
And I love his little scarf that's like he's in the high winds going straight back.
Yes, right, exactly. Yeah. January 19th. Linus and Lucy are playing tic-tac-toe. Lucy has put an X in the upper right-hand corner. She says, "There's my X." She hands the paper to Linus, saying, "Now don't mess it all up. Try to be neat." Linus is drawing on the paper. He hands it back to Lucy, and we see he has placed an O in the upper left corner, but is an ornate, calligraphic, Gothic O.
Yeah, I remember this strip from my childhood. I don't know why I just found such delight in Linus. Again, you can't tell if he's being sarcastic or if he's just like, "Oh, I'll take advantage of this opportunity."
I think he is just, his version of sarcasm is to just agree with someone some way or do what they ask, but do it in a way that is so unbelievably over the top.
Yeah.
That it becomes sarcasm. They get what they want and still aren't very
It's
happy
the most sincere sarcasm. I'm thinking Linus should be sincere in that pumpkin patch, and maybe the Great Pumpkin would show up.
Yes. January 22nd. Snoopy, clothed in what looks like a beat-up old, sheepskin from biblical times, is wandering around thinking to himself, "Unclean, unclean, unclean, unclean." In the next panel, we cut to modern-day suburbia where Sally is yelling, "Mom says to wash your hands for dinner." In the next panel, we see Charlie Brown doing just that. Then he pats Snoopy on the head and snout and says, "Excuse me, Snoopy, I have to go eat dinner." Sally, though, says, "And you have to wash your hands again because you touched the dog." "Oh, good grief," says Charlie Brown as he goes back to the sink. Snoopy is shocked by this. His ears shoot straight up in the air and he says, "Touch the dog?" He thinks, rather. "Touch the dog? Stay away from me," says Sally. "My hands are clean." But Snoopy is on his hind legs and pursuing her. "Look out, I'm covered with disease. I'm filthy dirty." Sally runs away, yelling, "Stay away, I said." Snoopy is still pursuing her. "Here comes the bubonic plague. Pat my head and get a handful of germs. Here comes the walking disease carrier. Beware, beware." He chases Sally up to the top of the back of a lounge chair, where he continues vocalizing to himself, I guess. "Look out for me. I'm diseased. I'm contaminated. Sally yells, "Help!" Snoopy then walks away on all fours, looking completely annoyed, thinking to himself, "Touch the dog. Good grief."
This one really bothered me.
Oh, really?
Okay.
This was very upsetting for a number of reasons. I never saw this in Sally before. This is just kind of hysterical behavior. I mean, she freaks out about school and math and things, but she didn't strike me as a person who would be freaked out about germs.
Oh, I think this one's hilarious. This is
Really?
one of my favorites. I love this one. Oh, God, yes. Yeah, I just think it's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, she's a kid. You're supposed to wash your hands, then go to dinner table. And she doesn't want to do that. Yeah, it's just, it works for me totally. And I think the drawings.
Well, it is a little bit cartoonier than Schulz I mean, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Panel 8, where he's jumping up and waving his arms. I wouldn't think that was Schulz if I just saw that figure by itself.
This is again childhood strip. I had a run of these 1967 strips, and one of the books I had as a little kid, and I remember this one. I'm kind of with you, Jimmy. I just this one makes me laugh and laugh and laugh, and the maniacal look on Snoopy's face going after Sally is very funny to me.
Yeah, I love that one. February 3rd. It's a snowy day, but Charlie Brown is standing atop the pitcher's mound. He has a look of quiet but pleased contemplation on his face. Panel 2, he just sighs, a wry, sheepish grin on his face. Schroeder comes up and says to him, "Reliving past glories, Charlie Brown?" Charlie Brown says, "Yes. I've been thinking about the day I threw my strike."
I wonder if we could go back and research and find where that strike is.
I love that. I just think that's so funny. His one strike, and he's such an optimist. He doesn't think about the thousands of balls. It's just his one strike there. That's great. February 13th. We're in the middle of a long sequence again. This one is an arm wrestling sequence between Lucy and a character known as the Masked Marvel. We see Five, and he's yelling, "Hey, come on, it's the Arm Wrestling Championship." Patty, Pigpen, and Shermy are running to it, and Shermy yells, "It's Lucy against the Masked Marvel." Now we see Sally, Linus, and Charlie Brown all looking on, and Linus says, "They've been going at it for 2 hours now." And then in the last panel, we see the Masked Marvel, who is in fact Snoopy, and Lucy locked in a very tense and almost violent looking arm wrestling competition. Snoopy thinking, "Give up, you stubborn female," and Lucy thinking, "Crack, you stupid beagle."
Wow. Outside of the fact that Shermy's in this.
Shermy, all right.
Yeah.
Woo.
I mean, everything is all about this last panel. I've never seen Schulz go far out like this. This is
Look
a
at
first.
the lightning bolt marks.
Yeah,
coming from the
this
lower
is an
left-hand
entirely alien drawing style, as far as I could see.
Yeah,
but this is the only dialogue Shermy's got this year, so that leads us to
time for the Shermometer.
Let's check the Shermometer, Charlie Brown.
All right, what do we got? Does anyone have a suggestion?
Here's my word for Shermy this year. Expository. Because Shermy's just saying it's Lucy against the Masked Marvel. He has to be the one that kind of fills the audience in on what's going on.
Well, with slim pickings this year, that's the only thing we got for Shermy. But it does make him an expository, cool, straggling, cynical, philosophical, history-loving, empathetic, aggressive, compassionate, patient, pedantic, knowledgeable, emotional, good listening, vain, friendly hypocrite.
Is Shermy growing his hair out just a little bit to match what's going on in the 60s?
It's 67, and Shermy is letting it all hang out. He's got a full 1/4 of an inch on top there.
Yeah, and Five is wearing a shirt that says 5 on it. It's like Schulz saying, nobody knows who this character is. I have to remind them by him having his own name on the front of his shirt.
This continues February 14th. The arm wrestling competition is still going on. Snoopy thinks, "Yield, you rascal." Lucy thinks, "Surrender, you dumb dog." Snoopy, "Succumb, you dark-haired fiend." Lucy, "Quit, you long-eared monster." They're getting wilder and wilder in their arm wrestling competition. "I can't hold out another second," thinks Snoopy. "I've got to do something." While Lucy thinks, "I can't hold out any longer. I think I'm going to faint." Then Snoopy goes to his go-to move, kisses Lucy on the nose. Smack. Lucy screams, "Og!"
The little heart sticking out.
But he doesn't actually pin her arm.
That's true.
Point.
He still didn't win, but he did get relief from the pressure, I guess.
This, by the way, is sequence number 2, up for nomination for best sequence, arm wrestling.
Yeah. Now, do you think that Schulz, Michael, do you think that Schulz was like thinking of what he's going to put into into his Valentine's Day, and he started with this final picture and moved his way backward?
It's possible. I also think he asked one of his kids to draw the first 3 panels there.
What do you think he's inking that with? Like, is that? It looks like he's almost using the lettering pen on Lucy's hair, because it's not quite a brush. Like, if you see, it doesn't taper on the ends; it comes to almost like a rounded point.
Yeah, maybe it's the one he uses for bold lettering.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yes.
I forget, what is that? The C
I think it's the
speedball.
something, yeah. Yeah, because it's so weird. The scribbly little lightning bolts are really the thing that strikes me as way outside of. Well, I mean, everything is way outside of Peanuts in those first 3 panels, but pretty wild.
If you don't go to many of the strips this year, you who are listening in, take a look at this one. This will surprise you, I think, if you are familiar at all with 1960s Peanuts. It does look rough. I would have guessed that this, if you hadn't told me and you just said, "Hey Harold, when do you think this strip was done?" I would have thought it was like in the early to mid 70s. It's got such a roughness to it. It makes me think of like that era when he was doing Snoopy playing tennis and getting all upset, and the lines just get so disturbingly rough.
Yeah, this was drawn violently, meaning like he was really attacking the paper with that ink to make those marks. It's almost a scribble. It's not concerned at all with being attractive looking. I mean, that's the point, is to make it unattractive looking. I mean, Lucy looks like a completely different character by the 3rd panel,
and that everything in their bodies and including in their clothing, for Lucy, is looking rougher than it normally would.
Don't you think Lucy looks like Peter Bagart in that 3rd panel?
Oh, wow. That, you are right about that.
Or vice versa, right?
Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa.
Whatever, was it Lisa? Yeah.
Yeah, this is really remarkable art, and I wanted to bring up the anger index while we've got such an intense moment here.
Oh yeah.
And the happiness index. Where do you think we are this year overall? Do you feel like this is a happier or more angry? For anger, do you think there's more or less than last year?
I would go slightly up on the happiness, slightly down on the anger.
I'm going to agree.
We had 111 angry strips out of 365 or 6. I don't know what the leap year was. 1966, which was 30%. This year it's 40%. 146 strips have characters angry in them.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
That's probably, that's up there with some of the ones he did in the 50s. I think he had some angry years in the 50s, but that's a lot of strips with characters showing anger. Happiness index is actually slightly down from 132.
Wow, we were wrong, Michael. The one time I agree with
never
you,
agree
and
with
you're
me.
wrong.
That's the rule.
It's from 132 to 123, so it's not a huge difference, but it's down 2%. So 36% to 34%. And I wasn't, I look at these as well, and I was trying to think before I added them up. Where are we? And I said, well, it's pretty much about the same as last year, isn't it? And it's like, well, no, there's a lot going on here, and maybe I can talk a little bit about some things I'm noticing in the characters as we go along, where characters are allowed to be angry. I've noticed, like, when Peppermint Patty shows up, she's usually happy, so she helps add to the happiness in the strips.
Well, there's also this thing, just with art in general, where like the content of it is only one part of it. Even though like a character may be expressing anger in a strip, it does not necessarily mean that particular strip is angry. It might be actually a super joyful strip because
that's right.
It's Snoopy, reacting to Lucy being miserable, right? And that would be a strip that contains both anger and joy.
That's correct. Yeah.
But the overall turn of the strip, the tone of the strip rather, is that it would be a joyful strip. So you could have technically a year that has much, much more anger in it, but that to the reader is actually a more positive, more joyful experience.
Yeah, I think so. And that's why I did anger and happiness. I was trying to kind of see how they balanced out. I do have a general feeling that when you see these kinds of swings, that just knowing myself as an artist, if you see a significant shift, it's probably also going on in the life of the person. He's not just, he's not in a certain space and then the strip goes a different place. I would think, it's not obviously one-to-one correlation. There's a lot that goes into these, but I would guess that Schulz was dealing with anger this year.
I don't know about that.
Maybe maybe dealing with it well, but just experiencing it.
Well, would you consider
I
this
feel like
last thing, the wrestling strip, anger? I don't see any anger in there.
This dumb dog. I mean, yeah, they're angry.
No,
I think
but it's sports.
Yeah, you can be angry in sports.
Well, you can be
So as someone who did cause a near riot, where the police had to show up, I can tell you can.
The police had to show up.
3 cop cars, the Stadies. Yeah.
Was this were you playing basketball or what happened?
Yeah, this was a high school basketball game, and the guy that I got into it with ended up being a professional wrestler. It's the whole thing.
So how did that turn out for you?
Oh, I fled.
So the police were looking for you.
Michelle Borzak stood up for me. A girl came. It was embarrassing. Really funny though.
Jimmy was looking at your calendar to do the statute of limitations, and figure it all out.
February 20th. Sally comes up to Charlie. This is another sequence.
Yes, I forgot this one. Let's call this the George Washington sequence.
Yeah, in this sequence, Sally has, against her teacher's wishes, stolen a crayon and brought it home. And she's trying to get Charlie Brown to help her out. But Charlie Brown wants her to fix her own problems. And in this one, she says she has. She comes up to Charlie Brown and says, "Well, I solved my problem without your help, stupid wishy-washy big brother." Sally continues, "When my teacher asked me if I had taken that crayon, I merely said no." Charlie Brown is shocked and he says, "You mean you lied?" Sally says, "Of course I lied. So what?" Charlie Brown, chasing after her, yells, "But that's wrong. It's wrong to lie. It's always wrong to lie." Sally turns, raises her fists, and shouts, "Don't give me any of your middle-class morality."
Right on, Sally.
Yeah, baby. Stick it to the man.
Stick it to the man. Yeah, I like Sally.
But look at that Charlie Brown face. That Charlie Brown face is like, you almost feel like Schulz is editorializing a little bit there, where he's like, okay, you got to side with Charlie Brown on this.
Oh, for sure. But boy, Sally, you don't ultimately, because Sally is so compelling and charismatic in her strange
don't mess with her
life outlook, where she is looking out for number one. She is going to figure out this system, and she's not going to become a victim to it.
Yeah.
Now, but Charlie Brown cannot obviously handle his sister as a liar. So we go to February 22nd, where this continues. Sally says to her brother, "You've been telling everyone that I lied to my teacher, haven't you?" She continues, "Don't you know that psychologists say children don't always know that they're lying? To an innocent child like me, if a lie works, it isn't a lie. What do you think of that?" Charlie Brown has the perfect response and yells, "George Washington!" It sends Sally over the edge. She's crying, "You're right. Wah, I'll never lie again." Then Charlie Brown, very sternly with arms folded, says, "I hated to do it, but some problems call for drastic action."
Yep. It's the atomic bomb of winning an argument.
Now, this is one strip where I feel like it does feel a little dated, because I don't think the George Washington argument would necessarily.
No, you'd go George Washington
everything.
Owned slaves next.
Yeah.
That would be the end of it.
I don't know if this has persisted to the present day, but
I don't think.
That was clearly, if you had to write your little 4th grade paper on the first president, you'd say he never told a lie. I mean, that was just
right.
Yeah.
part of the
it's part of the folklore. No, I don't think it has persisted. I don't think my kids who are in college now would know the George Washington never told a lie. Maybe they would, but certainly not to the point that someone just yelled George Washington. That would be the first thing they thought of.
Yeah, and the other thing in here that really did strike me this year, and this is a good example of it, is talking about anger. Schulz is allowing Charlie Brown to be more angry, more freely angry than I've seen him, say, since the 50s. And he seems to have a bit more of a backbone
Yes.
than what he's had in certain ways. And we're seeing sides of Charlie Brown that we haven't quite seen before. And it's really fascinating to me because, I mean, Schulz, relates to all of his characters, but Charlie Brown, again, is one. That's, again, where I was thinking, I'm guessing there's something going on in his life. He's obviously being a parent in this era and has been, but there's a side to Charlie Brown that is really fleshing him out and I think making him even more endearing than he has been before.
Yes, and what I'd say, so you get to the end of the February 20th strip, and Sally, with "Don't give me any of your middle class morality," and that's your punchline, your laugh, and she's our hero of the moment, sticking it to the man. And Charlie Brown only has his look of disgust and disappointment. If this was, say, 5-6 years earlier, I think we would have a sequence of Charlie Brown being ineffectual in the face of this argument.
Yeah.
Right. And it would be something like, well, I know you're wrong, but I don't know where, or, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But here, because we have this accumulated Charlie Brownness, and he has been changing over the last couple of years, in the next strip where he does take on almost a parental, or at least the big brother role, and says no, and Sally starts crying, we're on Charlie Brown's side. We get it, because he is being the responsible big brother, and he has that very stern pose with his arms crossed. I love it. It's a really subtle switch of his, not switch of his character, but evolution of his character.
Right. I mean, a few years back, this would have been Lucy and
yes,
and Charlie Brown.
Yes,
or possibly Lucy and Linus, but now Charlie Brown is the big brother, and it's something we haven't seen so much of before.
It's one of my favorite roles for him. Couple things I love. Panel 2 on this strip I love because that's such a unique character. This innocent kid who is actually not at all innocent, but is playing up people's ideas of innocence to get away with whatever she needs to get away with. And yet is really charming and sweet, and we love her.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
That's a rich character.
Very much. The other thing that all of this is striking me is how fast this stuff is being drawn. And when you look at that last panel, it makes sense that her word balloon is wobbly because she's upset and crying, but Charlie Brown's is wobbly, and the lettering is all over the place in terms of size and shape. I mean, look at the word action versus the word for. There's clearly no lines being done at this point. There's no spacing it out. There's probably very little pencil.
Yeah.
He is just blowing through these things quickly.
Now, do you think that that's a wobbly balloon for Charlie Brown because of Charlie Brown's emotion? I don't know. I mean, it works fine if you want to think of it that way, but I don't know. Because I somehow feel that even though we see strong Charlie Brown, that somehow that little balloon suggests that, that took a lot.
Yeah, he does have the wobbly line on his mouth too.
Yeah, so, it's like the the energy levels in the video games. He's dropped a little bit. He had to use up a lot of it to get that out.
February 26th. It's a Sunday. Linus is making a little bowl of cereal for himself. It doesn't seem to be Snicker Snacks, but perhaps a competing brand. Then he gets out the milk. As he's pouring the milk into the cereal, the phone rings. "Oh no," he says. So Linus runs over to the phone and answers it. "Hello?" he says. "Oh, hi. Yeah, sure. Uh-huh." But while he's talking on the phone, he's looking out of the corner of his eyes back towards where his cereal is. Over the course of these next several panels, he looks more and more upset as he continues talking on the phone. "Uh-huh. Oh, sure. Oh, uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Yeah, I think so too. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Sure, he says. At this point, he's looking back towards his cereal, and he's looking legitimately flustered. He gets further upset as he says, "What? Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely, sure. Uh-huh, uh-huh. What? Huh? Oh, yeah. Uh-huh, uh-huh." He's not even holding the phone up to his ear at this point. Then in the last panel, completely frazzled to his last nerve. He says, then yells to the ceiling, "My cold cereal is getting soggy." In the last panel, we see Charlie Brown just holding the phone, looking vaguely confused by the whole thing.
We're deeply confused.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really funny that the punchline is actually Charlie Brown, where it's a Linus solo strip, but the laugh is at Charlie Brown.
Yeah, and we don't know we don't know who he's talking to until the final panel. Again, another childhood one I remember so well. And I do love that Schulz is, I can totally relate to Linus, this small thing, but I mean, this has happened to all of us, right? Where you have something that is minor, so you don't want to bring it up, but at the same time, it's a big deal. And then you just explode. Right. Schulz's thing is again, the empathy for Charlie Brown, who's just wandered into some landmine that he had no idea about. I love that about the strip, because it's taking you to the innocent bystander, to the and what they're having to deal with, even though we're spending all the time on Linus leading up to it. And if you look at the artwork, that fourth to last panel of Linus looking back and holding the phone away from him, if you just saw that drawing by itself and someone said, "Was this drawn by Charles Schulz or was this drawn by another artist?" I might have a hard time figuring that one out.
Yeah, no. I think I'd pick it out. If I want to give myself credit, I think I might be able to pick it out. But I mean, I see what you're saying with the chin shape and the hair look. Without context, it might look like an off-brand Linus. Would this be funny if a different character was in the last panel?
I think it would be funny, but not as funny.
I can't think of anyone else who would get a laugh.
Yeah.
March 12th. Linus is on hands and knees looking for something, and he says, "How did that ball get under there?" In the next panel, we see him reaching underneath the table to retrieve his lost ball, and he says, "Stupid ball." And then he gets up just a little bit too early when backing out and hits his head on the table. Bonk! He's seeing stars. Lucy comes over to see what's going on as Linus holds his head with all kinds of swirling patterns and stars around it. And she says, "What happened?" Linus says, "Arg." Lucy says, "What did you do? Did you hurt yourself?" Linus says, "Oof." Lucy continues, "What's the matter, huh? What happened? What happened?" Linus is bent over, kneeling on the ground, saying, "Arg." "What did you do?" asked Lucy. "What's the matter?" Linus, Linus is bent over. We see only his butt and stars emanating from the direction of his head as Lucy pleads, "Are you bleeding? Are you cut? Are you bruised? What happened?" Linus finally gets it together and screams, "I bumped my head!" And Lucy walks away saying, "Boy, what a crab."
It's the same strip now with Lucy responding.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, notice that in both cases where he goes into super cartoonist mode, it's pain.
Yeah. Yeah, that panel, the fifth one where you see all the dots in Linus's eyes, I always found that one really unsettling.
Yeah.
That also looks almost like a Pete Bag drawing, Michael.
Yeah.
This, again, so memorable childhood. I remember this one, and I can relate to it. So we've had, this is 2 weeks after the Sunday that we had just done with his cold cereal. It's like Schulz hit a little gold mine and said, "Hey, wait, I can do this again." And they're both classics.
Absolutely.
And the next one is like the same thing. It's like he's really stuck in a rut here.
By the way, we've mentioned Peter Bag twice this episode, so I should point out that he is a cartoonist published by Fantagraphics in large part, and famous for the comic book Hate from the 90s, which is really funny. Adults only, but really funny.
Good luck describing this one.
March 22nd. We're in the middle of another long sequence. This will be the Jose Peterson sequence. And Jose Peterson is a baseball player from Peppermint Patty's world, who Peppermint Patty thinks would be a fantastic addition to Charlie Brown's team. And in panel one, we see why, because we see Jose taking a mighty swing and clearly connecting. And boom, we see his batting average is .640, which is a technique we saw Schulz use once many years ago, actually. Then we see Peppermint Patty and Charlie Brown looking on. Peppermint Patty says, "That's the way Jose Peterson hit the year his family lived in New Mexico." Then, the next panel, Jose takes a big wallop, and we see 850 is his batting average. Now Peppermint Patty says, "That's the way Jose Peterson hit the year his family lived in North Dakota."
He doesn't appear much this year. I mean, it's 2 strips, so I don't really know if he's going to be a character or not. But even in this panel, first ethnic character.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And it's interesting, too, that he makes him part Swedish, right? And part Mexican. Yeah.
And looking at the 2 drawings of him swinging, they're almost identical, but this is such a new character to Schulz. It's like you see him nail the character in panel 3 after he takes a really good try at it in panel 1.
I was never a big fan of he does this actually later with Rerun, who is a character I actually love. But the scribbly back and forth hair, I never quite understood what he was going for.
Yeah, it's like a inverted bird's nest.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what's going on there.
Pretty good, though. I love the little checked shirt that he has. That stuff's really good. And I love the Peppermint Patty. So, yeah. So do you guys does someone want to take a shot at explaining what this whole sequence is all about?
Well, I get this mixed up with the Trading Snoopy sequence,
right.
Which is later in the year. Because it's kind of this is kind of a prequel to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's very short, and the idea is it's similar to Trading Snoopy in the sense that Linus is going to be replaced by Jose, and it just doesn't play out, and so yeah, it's just kind of an odd thing. Oh, it's weird. We skip a strip on a Saturday. And it's a Snoopy as a piranha, and then it does start again where Peppermint Patty is saying Jose is, going back with her to her neighborhood, and they're going to start their own team.
Yeah.
For some reason, the piranhas comes in for the Saturday edition before we have the resolution.
Yeah.
There is something about these appearances of Peppermint Patty that do just set her apart from other new characters when he'd introduce them. I think he got close with Frito, where he seemed to have a character that really had confidence right off the bat, right? Or he had confidence in right off the bat. But Patty has that, but also just has something about her that implies like a depth or a realness to her.
And she just feels like she's floating above and apart from these guys. It's like she'll change her mind about something, not because of something that Linus or Charlie Brown or Snoopy or Lucy did or said. She's just like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go do this. And she just kind of pops in and out of like a pixie from the strip, and you never know what to expect of her. She's just her own person.
Absolutely.
So do we see Jose Peterson again?
I don't think so. No, maybe once or twice. But March 26th, Charlie Brown is on the bench managing his heart out. He's thinking to himself, "Come on, Lucy, hit it. Please hit it." Ball goes right past Lucy. We see strike 2. And then in the next panel, strike 3. Lucy strikes out swinging. She has a look of absolute fury on her face as she walks back to the bench Charlie Brown is sitting on. He looks at her with the old side eye. He thinks to himself, "Good grief, she struck out again. That's 3 times so far. I should say something to her. After all, I'm the manager." Charlie Brown continues. Lucy sits on the bench now, looking still furious. Charlie Brown thinks, "But if I say one word, she'll blow sky high. She's so mad now, she's ready to bust. I don't dare make a sound." Charlie Brown continues, "Uh-oh, my throat's getting dry. I've got to clear my throat. But if I make just the slightest sound, she'll think I'm going to say something to her." Charlie Brown is really going down the rabbit hole with this now, and he thinks, "But I've got to clear my throat. I gulp. I've got to cough or go ahem or something. My throat feels so dry. Then after a panel of trying to hold it together, he very sheepishly coughs, ahem, to which Lucy screams, "I didn't strike out on purpose." Then in the last panel, Charlie Brown, having been sent flying, looks out at us and says, "We managers have a rough life."
This is really hilarious.
It's the same setup we've had every 2 weeks now, where there's the simmering thing that leads to the explosion in the next to last panel, and then it's somebody who's done the brunt of it responding.
Yeah, it's absolutely variations on that theme.
It's comedy gold. I think he struck something. He's like, oh, this is a deep vein.
He's also, when you look at that last or fourth from last panel on the bottom tier there, that Charlie Brown face is very similar to the face he makes when he's disgusted with Sally. And it's just such an odd face, but he must be into drawing it because every chance he gets, it seems he's whipping that one out.
Well, he seems to be really enjoying drawing these characters in these extreme poses. And again, that looseness and freeness, freedom that you were mentioning earlier, Jimmy, is really evident in these strips. And it brings the characters even to more life than what we've seen before.
And we've talked about him loosening up and the impact that has on a certain type of cartooning. But Michael, I actually wanted to ask you what you think about it, because you're a professed fan of like guys like Al Williamson.
Yeah.
Now, for our listeners out there who don't know who Al Williamson is, he didn't create Flash Gordon, but he drew Flash Gordon. He drew the Star Wars comic book when they adapted movies like Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. He did a strip called Secret Agent X9, and he's just a master realistic illustrator. However, I would say there's a looseness in that has to be present too. Wouldn't you kind of agree? Especially in the inking.
He's a little looser than Alex Raymond, who was his role model. Yeah, but we can't talk about Al Williamson when we're looking at Charles Schulz. They are on complete opposite ends of the spectrum, the cartooning spectrum.
Yeah, but that's what I find interesting about it, is that when I look at Al Williamson, I am very aware that those are ink lines put down by a person.
Yeah.
That's what I like about it. Right? Even though he is going for something that is photorealistic, I can see his brush lines. I can see his pen lines. I can see the moments where he's taking off from a photo as opposed to just slavishly copying it. And I still think that sort of speed and looseness quality of the inking matter is important no matter what, Well,
I just want to comment on that is, since he never produced all that much work in his life, I don't think there's anything to do with speed in his work method. I think it's just work it till it's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask that question. So, Jimmy, you're saying that you appreciate Al Williamson's work because you're aware of the line art and the artwork. I would have to say I tend to be taken out if the more an artist does that, especially with this realistic style art. I think of like Joe Kubert when he was doing, was it Tor, where it's so much the ink line, and also some of the stuff that Jack Kirby did with Joe Simon in the 50s, like Boys Ranch. I can't read it because all I see is blobs of ink. I can't see. Well, I can't pull it together in my head.
I put Kubert into the scratchy category, which Williamson was not. Each line was precise. Exactly where it needed to be.
Well, see, and where I agree with you mostly in that I think he worked it till it was perfect in the pencil stage. I think that is perfect, and then I think it's inked quickly. I mean, he's a genius, and he's a better artist than anyone in the world. So it is a highly polished drawing, but I can still see like the brush ran out of ink towards the end, or there was a slight wobble here and stuff like that. And that's what makes it Al Williamson, where as opposed to when you see a lot of the modern comics, which are in quotes realistic, I don't see the person in it at all. And that bugs me.
Well, Williamson, I mean, it's sad to say I think the only Eisners he ever won were as best inker.
Right.
Which was not his strongest point.
Did he usually always ink his own pencils? Is that why you think the pencils got?
No. At Marvel, I think later in life he was so slow as a penciler that he just made a living as an inker. superhero comics.
Yeah, I mean, and he did elevate a lot of that stuff, but you do see he's a great inker, but I mean, it's several tiers down from his prime stuff when he did.
But my question is, as a penciler, was there a large body of work where he penciled and someone else inked? Did he live that life
later in his career, he had other inkers.
Okay.
Pretty consistent, who emulated his style. But yeah, it's not the same as him inking himself. That's his best stuff.
March 29th. A really odd-looking Snoopy with a large underbite and very bad teeth is crawling around on his stomach outside. And he hears from the distance, this is another, not necessarily a sequence, but Snoopy has been pretending to be a piranha for a while now. And we hear him, from off-panel, I hear there's a piranha swimming around in the neighborhood. We see the voice was coming from Lucy, who is yelling, "By golly, that piranha better not try to chomp me." Then we see Snoopy, who registers this and looks much more like Snoopy and less like a piranha in panel 3, as Lucy continues yelling, "Any piranha tries to chomp me, I'll pound him." Then as Lucy walks by Snoopy with a scowl on her face, Snoopy is back to just sitting on all fours, thinking to himself, "There's nobody around here but us beagles." Snoopy is the mimic.
It's funny that Schulz, even though he's always forward-looking, he goes back to something he was doing a lot in the late 50s, which is the Snoopy doing the animal impersonations. There's 3 this year, piranha, vulture, and a mountain lion, which that's my favorite Snoopy, is actually the animal imitations. And in the last few years, it's been humans. So it's been pirates and foreign legionnaires and flying aces. So I'm glad he's back to his animal roots.
Always gives Schulz a great opportunity to do some goofy cartooning and really show what an elastic and expressive character Snoopy is.
Yeah. No, this takes me back to a strip. We didn't nominate any of these strips, but it made me think of something, talking about Snoopy's, I guess, fantasy life and how it bleeds into the lives of the kids. There's an earlier sequence where, or maybe it's not fully a sequence again, but if we call a sequence a full week or more of strips, so dailies or whatever. But Charlie Brown and the Kite-Eating Tree goes to a new level this year, where Charlie Brown is convinced that the tree is kind of anthropomorphic and that it is munching these kites. And Charlie Brown's fantasy actually turns out to be something that the other kids see. And that was another thing where not just Snoopy was having the flights of fantasy, but in a way, Charlie Brown has a flight of fantasy, not the way, say, Linus does with the Great Pumpkin, where he believes something, but we never see any indication that it actually is happening. Schulz actually goes there where we see what Charlie Brown sees, and it is this kind of fantastic world where there is a tree that can eat a kite. I was wondering what you guys' thoughts on that were.
Well, we don't actually see the tree doing anything, but we see people's reaction to seeing the tree do something.
Well, we do see on 2/19, February 19th, we did see the tree having a smile for the first time, although it is in one of those display panels at the beginning of a Sunday. So, it could be seen as something that's like metaphoric as opposed to it being actually on.
And Schulz is actually giving a voice with a little balloon on the tree going chomp, chomp, chomp at the end of that strip. So right. He's, to me, as I was a reader, certainly as a kid when I was reading, I was like, okay, there is a kite-eating tree in Peanuts. Yeah. And that changes things a little bit. I'm trying to think of, and we had Linus's blanket come to life and attack Lucy. Yeah, this fantasy element is. I mean, this is a big new step for Schulz in a way, I think, with the kite-eating tree.
Well, we see a couple more of that pretty fantastic things happening.
That's why I quoted Strawberry Fields in the open. Nothing is real, because this year is a complete fantasy trip, and I like it for the most part. As we come up, there's a couple of things where I'm less crazy about, but for the most part, I've really enjoyed it, and I always liked the kite-eating tree as a kid for some reason. I had a little trash can for my a waste paper basket with the kite-eating tree on it. Yeah, I liked this sequence. I thought it was good.
Those are good waste baskets.
And the fantasy does not bother me for the most part. We'll see. You know what? My mileage tends to vary depending on what fantasy.
Just the way it unfolds, it almost makes me feel like Charlie Brown wills the reality of the tree into existence, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it totally does. Yes. April 4th. Snoopy is lying on his doghouse when a little bird comes fluttering up, looking very worse for the flight. Lands on Snoopy's nose in panel 2, like just out of breath, says whew, and gasps twice. Then in the third panel, is just sitting there on top of Snoopy's nose. And then the last panel is asleep on top of Snoopy's nose. And Snoopy thinks, must have been a rough flight.
And the bird's in the same pose as Snoopy is lying on his back.
Yeah.
On the doghouse.
Okay, this is controversial.
All right.
Apparently, the internet thinks this is the first Woodstock. I saw a couple of references to this. Now, we assumed that the little flying upside down bird was Woodstock from last year, but
yes,
they're crediting this one, and there's no way to tell because they look
wrong.
exactly alike.
Exactly. Yeah.
But all the birds look exactly alike.
Exactly. Yeah.
I even went so far as to start flipping into the 70s and counting head feathers. Because it looked like some of the, like 72, 73 that I was looking at, he had 11 head feathers, and most of the birds have like 5. So that doesn't seem to be consistent.
Yeah. I'll be a contrarian and say that the third the third back in the 7th panel of the strip with Linus patting birds' heads, that's Woodstock.
That's Woodstock. Well, look, in Good Grief, which is an officially authorized biography, they say it's one of the 2 birds that were hatched last year.
Oh.
So I think if they wanted to correct that record, and Schulz was alive, they could have done it then. So the internet is surprisingly wrong.
I'm shocked.
You'd think with a free flow of information, you would get nothing but good information, but it turns out that's not how it works. Hey, but you know what? Here's some good information. We're going to stop right now, and we're going to come back next week because we still have months and months and months to talk about, and I want to make sure that we have all the time in the world to do that. So we're going to take a little break here. As the week goes on, if you want to keep this conversation going, you can check out our website at unpackingpeanuts.com. You could follow us on Instagram and Twitter, where we're at unpackpeanuts. You could check out our Patreon, and you could do that by going through our website. And also on our website, you could buy a t-shirt. You could buy one of our books, because we're all working cartoonists, and, we could use a couple bucks. You could throw a couple clams our way. For God's sake, it wouldn't hurt you. Other than that, I just hope you have a fantastic week and that you come back next week and we continue 1967. Until then, for Michael and Harold, this is Jimmy. Be of good cheer.
Yes.
Be of good cheer.
Unpacking Peanuts is copyright Jimmy Gownley, Michael Cohen, and Harold Buchholz. Produced and edited by Liz Sumner. Music by Michael Cohen. Additional voiceover by Aziza Shakrala Clark. For more from the show, follow Unpack Peanuts on Instagram and Twitter. For more about Jimmy, Michael, and Harold, visit unpackingpeanuts.com. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for listening.
Bonk.